Hello, basketball people, we have news. Let's go to more news about the Golden State Warriors. I ask you to give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, as I am a Warriors fan. The conflict between coach Steve Kerr and player Jonathan Kuminga is only escalating, and it's clear that Kuminga will be traded. The teams interested in Jonathan Kuminga are the Chicago Bulls, Sacramento Kings, and Pelicans. But the Warriors will try to trade him to the Pelicans, who have defenders who fit well on the team, and one of them is Herb Jones. Jonathan Kuminga may never play again for the Warriors. After head coach Steve Kerr confirmed the three veteran stars were out and that Kuminga would return to the rotation, the young forward suddenly popped up on the injury report only a few hours from tip-off due to back soreness. Kuminga was eventually ruled out and sat on the bench as he has done now for 10 of the past 11 games. But very few fans were buying that this was actually an injury-related absence. It's hard to buy given the circumstances, not to mention the idea of getting back soreness after playing just 10 minutes in nearly a month. There's a legitimate chance that this was a tactical ploy by either the Warriors or Kuminga's camp, causing them to pull the plug in the hours leading up to the game. From the perspective of the franchise, the only thing to be gained was the 23-year-old helping them to victory. While any win is important, it turns out Kuminga wouldn't have made much of a difference anyway given the Warriors suffered a blowout 131-94 loss. The downside to playing Kuminga is that he gets a legitimate, problematic injury that alters a rival's view on trading for him. That would be a catastrophe for a Golden State team that clearly needs to use Kuminga's contract for a roster upgrade, having fallen back to an 18-17 record on the season after Friday's loss. It would also be a disaster for Kuminga, who has been eager to leave the Warriors and experience a fresh start ever since the offseason. Perhaps then it was he and his camp that pushed the late absence, and honestly, who would blame someone for not wanting to put their body on the line for an employer who was going to get rid of them in weeks anyway? When asked about Kuminga's injury in the postgame, Kerr stated that he was unsure whether it would linger. The Warriors are quite methodically providing little clarity, but as a result we can only presume that Kuminga's time with the franchise is coming to an end, and that neither party wants to upset that by putting him back out on the floor. Warriors face stiff competition in potential Michael Porter Jr. trade. The Golden State Warriors aren't the only team interested in a Michael Porter Jr. trade, as teams such as the Detroit Pistons, Milwaukee Bucks, and Chicago Bulls have joined them as reported suitors for the Brooklyn Nets star. According to NBA insider Jake Fisher, at least 4 teams are preparing to make an all-out push to acquire the veteran sharpshooter ahead of the February 5 trade deadline. It should come as no surprise that Milwaukee, league sources say, is evaluating Porter, wrote Fisher. Another team to monitor when it comes to Porter, league sources say, is Detroit. Sources say that Golden State, which helped inspire this whole notebook, has indeed had some internal discussions about whether to pursue Porter. Fisher further noted that the Bulls had serious discussions with the Denver Nuggets last season about a potential Michael Porter Jr. trade, but the talks fell through. Yet another team to consider, Chicago. The Bulls, sources say, were in serious discussions with the Nuggets last season about swapping Zach LaVine for Porter. Warriors could use MPJ. The Warriors, who shot 13 of 44, 30%, from 3 in Friday night's 131-94 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder, could definitely use Porter's long-range marksmanship. Steve Kerr's team ranks 15th in 3P%, 36.1, through the first 35 games of the season despite ranking number 1 in three-point attempts with 43.9 per game. They also rank 27th in overall FG%, .453, ahead of 3 lottery-bound teams with losing records. Porter and the Warriors seem like a match made in heaven. The 7th year has the precise skill set that fits Golden State's pace-and-space system, with his ability to come off pin downs to shoot threes and cut to the rim off misdirections. Furthermore, as a career /50/40/80 sniper, he's one of the most efficient shooters in the league. Potential Warriors trade package. The one hurdle for the Warriors to pull off a trade for MPJ is the Nets' reported lack of interest in Jonathan Kuminga. Per Hoops Hype's Michael Scotto, the Nets had interest in Kuminga last offseason but are no longer enamored with the Congolese player. I mean, look, Brooklyn. I don't see just because I know some people maybe have mentioned Brooklyn, I don't see that ultimately, from my sources and whatnot, Scotto told Sacktown Sports 1140, via Nets Wire. What probably makes Kuminga seems less interesting as a trade candidate is due to the fact that he has been out of Golden State's rotation. For Golden State get a deal done, they may have to offer 2 of their 3 first-round picks, along with Kuminga and filler contracts, to match MPJ's salary. And even that may not get the job done, considering the high market value for Porter. Bleacher Report's Zach Buckley previously built a Warriors trade package that would send Kuminga, Moses Moody, Buddy Hield, a 2026 first-round pick, top 4 protected, and a 2028 first-round pick swap to the Nets for MPJ. Porter's shot-making could be a godsend for Golden State, which has struggled to find consistent scoring around Stephen Curry, Buckley wrote last month, urging Golden State to make a run for the former NBA champion. Steve Kerr doesn't want Warriors to paint themselves into a corner by going all in for a superstar. Kerr made it clear, going all in for a superstar isn't always the answer. The Golden State Warriors season hasn't met expectations. Despite a veteran core of Stephen Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green, the squad has hovered around .500 for most of the season. With fans relentlessly expressing their disappointment and pundits discussing how the Warriors can turn things around in a bid to make the most of Curry's remaining years, the subject of trades often comes up. And with uncertainty surrounding the futures of Giannis Antetokounmpo and Anthony Davis, the rumor mill has been churning out potential trade scenarios left and right. Steve Kerr clarified that delving into these scenarios is much more difficult than fans and the media make it out to be. More than anything, as fans want the franchise to go all in on a bona fide superstar, that would likely mean clearing out the cupboard, leaving the Warriors in a worse spot than they are now. Think long and hard about a trade. One doesn't have to look far to see the impact a trade can have on a team. Last season, the Warriors made 2, the first was for combo guard Dennis Schroeder in December 2024. However, the addition of the German guard did little to improve the Warriors, so in February 2025, the front office pulled the trigger on acquiring Butler from the Miami Heat. That trade injected the team with new life as they went on a tear to finish the regular season as the 7th seed, then knocked off the Houston Rockets in the first round of the playoffs. Is there a trade out there that would make the Warriors better today? That's the only way Kerr would be willing to change something. If we can get better, for sure. You know, that's Mike's job. Obviously, he made a great trade last year. If there's something that makes us better, for sure, Kerr said in a conversation with former NBA player Tom Tolbert. Despite the offensive firepower Curry and Butler bring, the Warriors have struggled to generate enough scoring, ranking 21st in the league. In addition, their lack of size and athleticism has been a glaring weakness that opponents routinely exploit. With the Warriors having an appealing trade asset in the promising forward Jonathan Kuminga, Steve Kerr is finally and quietly resolving one of the Warriors' biggest issues. Finally, some consistency? Aside from questionable roster construction, one of the most glaring issues with the Golden State Warriors' slow start to the season has been coach Steve Kerr's inconsistent lineup and playing time decisions. If not for another late-game blunder in Toronto, Golden State was eyeing a perfect 3-0 road trip to end 2025. Games in Brooklyn and Charlotte finally saw some consistency from Kerr in regard to his closing lineup. Warriors may have finally settled on a closing lineup. For a team as experienced as the Warriors, late-game execution has been shockingly erratic. They've handed away winnable games all season, and it's often felt like Kerr was throwing darts at a board, hoping to land on the right closing group. He's always been one to ride the hot hand, but there's value in having a trusted 5 you can count on nightly. That's what made the final 3 minutes in Brooklyn so notable. Kerr closed with a lineup of Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, Jimmy Butler, Anthony Melton, and rookie second-round pick Will Richard. While the big 3 are fixtures in crunch time, few fans expected Richard, the 56th overall pick, to be out there with a fully healthy roster. Yet it worked. Melton scored on a tough layup, and Richard followed it up by picking the pocket of fellow rookie Igor Demon before finishing with an emphatic dunk. Golden State entered that stretch up 6 against an inexperienced Brooklyn team, The kind of game they've inexplicably let slip away this season. However, this time, the group closed the door. In Charlotte, the same five checked in with 3:45 left and a 5-point lead. Again, Melton and Richard delivered. Melton's steal led to a Richard 3, and the rookie followed it up with a slick assist to Draymond Green for another deep make. The Warriors won both games with sharp execution down the stretch, a welcome change albeit against lesser opposition. Kerr's lineup and DNP decisions have been chaotic all year, and much of the fan frustration has stemmed from a lack of consistency. But now, he may have found a closing unit, at least for the moment, that can finish games effectively. Time will tell how this group fares against better competition and more high-leverage moments. They won't be earning a nickname like the Death Lineup or Hampton's 5 just yet, but string together a few more clutch wins, and that could change. For now, it's just refreshing to see some stability at the end of games. Anthony Davis trade risk comes with under-the-radar stat Warriors fans can't ignore. Speculation of a potential Anthony Davis trade to the Golden State Warriors has elicited widespread reaction from on social media, with plenty pointing to the 10x All-Star's injury history as a reason not to pursue a move. Yet amid all the discussion around Davis's injury worries, there's an under-the-radar statistic that fans simply can't ignore when it comes to the risk associated with acquiring the 32-year-old. Jimmy Butler was just as much of an injury risk as Anthony Davis is now. In the last 3 full seasons before this one, Davis played 183 total games, which included 76 during the 2023-24 campaign with the Los Angeles Lakers. That 183 is 2 more games than Jimmy Butler had played in his previous 3 full seasons with the Miami Heat before the Warriors acquired him in February last year. So, in other words, we could argue that acquiring Butler last season carried with it just as much, if not more risk when it came to health and availability than what trading for Davis would now. In fact, Davis also averaged more minutes per game over the last 3 full seasons than what Butler had with the Heat. It's not something we should ignore when considering the potential of trading for Davis. The truth is that there was risk associated with the Butler move, yet that's undoubtedly worked well for the Warriors as the 6x All-Star changed their fortunes last season, and remains one of their few consistent and reliable players. There's this notion that Davis is just stuck on the sidelines all the time, something that wasn't helped by the fact he limped off the floor against Golden State with a groin injury after only 10 minutes on Christmas Day. But perhaps the injury woes are overplayed by the fact Davis is in trade conversations, when in reality there's a strong possibility that he'd be able to play 60-plus games and therefore be enough of a presence to be a real difference-maker for the Warriors. The injury history is certainly worth noting, but the real difference here between Butler and Davis is the cost. Golden State were reluctantly willing to move 2022 champion Andrew Wiggins in a trade for Butler, but it would be a whole new level of difficulty for the front office to deal a franchise legend in Draymond Green. They're reportedly not willing to make such a move right now, which is the primary reason, not the injury history, why a Davis trade to the Warriors remains unlikely just over a month out from the deadline.